Your blood pressure right now, that quiet number your doctor circles in red, is not a warning. It is a weapon. A weapon your ancestors forged over hundreds of millions of years to do something no cold-blooded creature on this planet could ever pull off. But the most unsettling part? The very same trait that made humans dominant is now quietly killing a billion of us. And the reason why comes down to salt, a long walk out of Africa, and a body that never got the update. Let's start at the beginning. Not your beginning, the beginning. About 375 million years ago, the first vertebrates hauled themselves onto land, and immediately they hit a problem. Getting blood up to a brain that was no longer underwater, against gravity, with lungs that needed their own supply, was a physiological nightmare. Early amphibians and reptiles solved it the only way they could. Low pressure, slow flow, simple circulation. One circuit, heart pumps. Blood goes everywhere at once. Lungs and body together, mixed, inefficient. The result? A crocodile can sprint, but only for about 30 seconds. Then it stops. Not because it's tired the way you get tired, because its muscles have literally run out of the oxygen-carrying capacity to continue. It switches to anaerobic chemistry, burning fuel without oxygen, and it takes hours to recover. A lizard on a hot rock looks lazy. It isn't being lazy. It is physiologically incapable of anything else. Mammals broke that ceiling. The key was a second, separate circulatory loop, a smaller, low-pressure circuit dedicated entirely to the lungs, running alongside a high-pressure circuit that drove blood hard and fast into the rest of the body. 2 pumps in one heart. The moment that separation happened, the rest of the body could run at a pressure the lungs never had to tolerate. And that pressure, that elevated, sustained arterial force, became the engine of everything that followed. Higher systemic pressure meant denser capillarization, more vessels, smaller vessels, reaching deeper into muscle tissue, which meant more oxygen delivered per second per kilogram of muscle, which meant sustained, high-intensity effort, not 30 seconds, hours. The Tarahumara people of northern Mexico run 100-mile distances over mountain terrain. A Kenyan distance runner at altitude maintains a pace that would kill a horse in an hour. That is not willpower. That is the mechanical consequence of a high-pressure circulatory system that took 375 million years to build. Subscribe and drop your next topic idea in the comments, because the next part is the piece almost nobody knows about. But endurance was only half the problem. The other problem was the brain. Your brain sits roughly a meter above your heart. Every time you stand up, gravity is trying to drain that blood back down. In most animals, this isn't a dramatic issue. Their heads are close to their hearts, or they spend most of their time horizontal. Humans went vertical. Full upright bipedal posture, head 1 meter up, all day, every day. That is an engineering challenge with only one solution. Enough arterial pressure to push blood continuously uphill against gravity without fainting every time you get off the ground. The Physiological Society has noted that the average mean arterial pressure in mammals, roughly 100 millimeters of mercury, represents an evolutionary threshold. Below that threshold, perfusing a brain positioned a meter above the heart becomes unreliable. Above it, you can sustain a large, energy-hungry brain in an upright body without needing elaborate anti-gravity biological machinery. Your blood pressure is not incidental to human intelligence. It is a prerequisite for it. The specific force required to keep a big brain conscious while standing up. Now here is where it gets stranger. Your red blood cells are 7 micrometers in diameter. Your capillaries, the smallest vessels in your body, are narrower than that. Your red blood cells are actually about 25% larger than the tubes they travel through. Every single second, in every single tissue, your blood pressure is physically deforming your red blood cells, squeezing them through channels too small to fit them, flattening them against the capillary walls. This sounds like a design flaw. It is the opposite. That violent squeeze presses the cell membrane directly against the surrounding tissue. It eliminates the gap between the oxygen carrier and the cells that need the oxygen. Gas exchange happens faster, more completely, across a shorter distance. Early air-breathing animals, lungfish, amphibians, had red blood cells 40 to 50 micrometers across. Enormous, slow, floating through wide, lazy vessels. Over millions of years, as blood pressure climbed, red blood cells shrank, not randomly, precisely in step with the rising pressure that would squeeze them into usefulness. Your circulatory system is a hydraulic press for oxygen delivery, and the press only works because of the pressure. A 2014 review published in Nephrology, Dialysis, Transplantation makes a point that almost never gets discussed outside specialist literature. Higher blood pressure is a strict prerequisite for larger body size. Bigger animals need higher pressure to move blood through longer vessels against greater gravitational resistance. Researchers estimated that a Brachiosaurus, one of the largest animals that ever lived, would have required a systolic pressure of around 140 millimeters of mercury just to keep blood moving through that neck. Humans landed in what the researchers describe as a Goldilocks zone, high enough pressure to support a large, powerful frame, capable of sustained running, heavy lifting, the kind of physical output that lets one species dominate a landscape, but small enough that standing upright doesn't constantly overwhelm the system. The number on your blood pressure cuff is not arbitrary. It is the pressure that a large bipedal primate with a giant brain and marathon running legs requires to function. It was calibrated by natural selection over geological time. So, if elevated pressure is the engine of human dominance, why is hypertension, chronically high blood pressure, now the leading modifiable risk factor for cardiovascular death on Earth, affecting over 1 billion people? Why did the weapon turn on us? The answer is the sodium hypothesis, and it begins with a walk. During the Paleolithic, as modern humans expanded out of Africa into new environments, our ancestors lived in hot, low-salt conditions. The body's response to salt scarcity is elegant and ruthless. Evolve kidneys that retain sodium with extraordinary efficiency. Retain sodium, retain water, maintain blood volume, maintain pressure. In an environment where salt is scarce and heat loss through sweat is constant, that adaptation keeps you alive. It is the difference between collapsing on a savanna and making it to the next water source. The problem is that the savanna ended. Salt stopped being scarce approximately 10,000 years ago when humans began preserving food and trading it. And in the last 200 years, processed food industrialized salt consumption to a level no human genome had ever encountered. The kidneys that kept your ancestor alive in the Rift Valley are now operating in a world where a single bag of chips contains more sodium than a Paleolithic human encountered in a week. Those kidneys still retain it. Blood volume climbs, pressure climbs with it. And the vessels, built for the pressures of an active, lean, low-sodium body, begin to suffer the mechanical consequences of a system running above its design tolerance, year after year, decade after decade. The hidden advantage became a hidden liability the moment the environment changed faster than evolution could follow. The trait did not break, the context did. So, the next time a doctor circles that number and frowns, understand what you are actually looking at. You are looking at the hydraulic signature of a species that stood upright and refused to fall. The force that pushed blood 1 meter uphill into the most complex brain on the planet. The pressure that squeezed red blood cells through passages they had no right to fit through, and in doing so, made humans the most aerobically capable large animal that has ever lived. The prerequisite for size, for strength, for endurance, for thought itself. The number is not just a warning. It is a record of everything your body had to become to get you here. If you'd like to see more videos like this, subscribe, and drop your next topic idea in the comments.